But first, the coronavirus. We're going to have to live with a lot of scares and outbreaks, and I think we're also going to have to figure out the least destructive way to deal with them. Because today should remind us that every state faces what Victoria faces now. Make a mistake, you'll get a second wave, even though the Prime Minister today was very definitely pinning this outbreak on Victoria.
It is clear that the Victorian wave that Australia is now experiencing, and that's how I have to honestly describe it. I mean, there is not a second wave that is going across the rest of the country. That is not occurring. There is a significant Victorian wave.
Yeah, it's strange. It's supposedly racist if you call this the Wuhan virus or the China virus. Journalists get very upset about that. That's racist, but apparently now it's fine to call this the Victorian wave. You go figure. Anyway, like I said, today reminds us we might need a broader perspective on what our future will be. Two 19-year-old women slipped back into Queensland without telling officials that they'd come back from Melbourne and should therefore be in quarantine. And they flew back in a plane, can you believe it? One's a cleaner at a school. And both are now in hospital 8 days later, infected.
I'm absolutely furious that this has happened, that these two people have gone to Victoria, have come back and have been given to authorities misleading information.
There is an investigation that is going on into the circumstances of these two young women coming back from Victoria into Queensland, including the way they got through the border and the fact that they were in the community for 8 days when they should have been quarantined.
No, absolutely, charge them, but more importantly, yes, stick them in a hospital so they can't infect anyone else. I've always wanted tougher quarantine. How many of our troubles would have been eased if that had been done from the start? But the Queensland Premier today also imposed a form of quarantine on all of Sydney.
Queensland will now be declaring Greater Sydney a COVID-19 hotspot. There has been more outbreaks in other parts of Greater Sydney, and that will now become a COVID-declared hotspot, taking effect from 1 a.m. on Saturday morning. Queenslanders should not be travelling to Sydney. The Greater Sydney area will encompass 34 local government areas.
Now, this ban on travellers from Sydney was done without telling the New South Wales Premier first.
No. It would have been nice if she told me, but that's fine.
Now, this Queensland ban on visitors, business people, sports people, relatives, whatever, from Sydney, a city of more than 5 million people, comes because just 19 people in New South Wales today got sick. So, sledgehammer, meet nut. Now, I get that the New South Wales government cannot absolutely guarantee that it's found everyone in Sydney who's possibly sick and might be going to Brisbane and then got them in quarantine instead, unable to go out and infect other people. We haven't been as strict about quarantine as we should be, and we certainly haven't been strict enough either with keeping the virus out of nursing homes, exactly where people are most likely to die. In Victoria today, 9 more people dead, 7 from nursing homes. The handling of those homes has been unbelievably slack and shocking. That's what we should really be doing, this sort of basic stuff, rather than shutting off a whole city saying you can't go to Queensland. By the way, a small ray of hope in Victoria. New infections today down from more than 500 on Monday to fewer than 300 today. It is not getting out of control. And yet, you know, I don't think Queensland voters will mind a bit the ban on Sydney, not to mention those wicked, leprous Victorians. There's so much fear out there, you see. I mean, I would really like a survey done here, like the one just done in Britain by Kext CNC of about 1,000 people over there. It asked them, guess how many people in Britain have been killed by the virus? And the average answer was nearly 7% of the population. Nearly 7% of Britons killed. Real death toll, just 0.07%, out by a factor of 100. Here, the virus has killed far fewer, just 0.001% of our population, most of them over 80 years old. So, are you starting to get a picture of maybe the kind of action we should be moving towards? And I do not mean huge bans on things, on states or cities or whatever. You look at Japan. Now, it was just as successful as us in stopping the virus, but without big lockdowns or even closing restaurants. But now, look now, a second wave of infections, worse than the first. But here's the interesting thing. It is not matched yet by deaths. Have a look, they have not risen. Although warning, there will be more deaths because this virus can take 2 or 3 weeks to kill people. So there may be an uptick soon. But Japan's Prime Minister says he's not planning on stopping his reopening of his economy because this wave is different, he says. For one, it's younger people who are going out that are getting sick. People who are the least likely to die by a long shot. And presumably the older Japanese, the most likely to die, being a lot more careful now, taking responsibility for their own safety, making their own risk assessments. How many of us would like to have that freedom? And of course, maybe Japan is more careful than Victoria's been in protecting nursing homes. So yet again, I have to ask, why don't we give governments the power, the order to more strictly quarantine the infectious and more strictly protect those most likely to die, people in nursing homes particularly. But then let everyone else, yes, ask them to social distance, tell them to wash their hands, wear a mask if they think it helps indoors. Outdoors is basically useless. Don't shut down the economy. And until there's a vaccine, if there ever is, I'm not sure there's a better way.